Hi everyone, and welcome to the Pisces Guide to Pop Culture. For today's installment, I'm your host, of course, TJ West, and as you probably noticed, I don't have my shirt on, which is in keeping with what I'm going to be talking about today, which is Timothy Janovsky's new book, Once Upon You and Me, which, among other things, is very much about body positivity. And, like a lot of other gay men, I've often struggled to have a lot of, faith in my body, and so, it kind of takes a lot for me to show off, but I'm getting more comfortable with that, and so what better place to do that? The Pisces Guide to Pop Culture, where we talk about feelings and all that kind of thing. Plus, I like to think I've been feeling very good about my body lately, so, maybe I just want to show it off. I don't know. Whatever the reason is, here we are. So anyway, for today, I do want to talk about the book, which I have to say is another success from Janovsky. I mentioned last week that I've yet to be disappointed with one of his books, and that remains true. I think that he's one of the most talented people working in gay male romance right now. And I really appreciated the way that this novel, like many of his others, grapples with some serious stuff. Obviously, the romance is the key element, but there's some stuff, again, about body positivity. There's stuff about mental health. So if you haven't read it, it's basically an intergenerational romance. In fact, the back cover describes it as a charming fairy tale meets spicy bedtime story in this deliciously enchanting age gap LGBTQIA plus romance, which is a pretty accurate description. So, when the book begins, Ethan is a 40-something divorcee who's helping to run a storybook themed resort. Taylor is Ethan's ex-wife assistant. They end up meeting, having a sexy, wild week together. Obviously, things kind of get a little bit hairy whenever Ethan's ex-wife and his daughter show up for the daughter's birthday. And there's all sorts of, the usual conflict that results in those kinds of things. So, a couple of things are worth noting. First of all, I think that Janovsky has a really cute style. One of the things I've always appreciated about his books, and I've read all of them up to this point, is that, he has a real keen grasp of tone. A rom-com is supposed to be funny and charming, and obviously that's something that's very difficult to achieve, but I think that Janovsky does it quite well. And so I really appreciate that he's able to be so lighthearted in his romances, at the same time as he's obviously not neglecting the romance part. And I appreciate that, there's this really, you can really feel the romantic sexual chemistry between Ethan and Taylor from the moment that they kind of interact with each other at the at the sort of entry hall to the resort. And I also give Janovsky credit for three other things that I want to focus on for the majority of the rest of this video. First is the issue of, as I said, body positivity. So Ethan is, what we would describe as a bear. So, he's very forthright about the fact that he is fat and doesn't have a ripped body. He's, I guess you would call burly as a way that you could describe it. And I like both that the character himself is okay in his own skin, but also that Taylor finds him desirable. We are trained as people, in American culture anyway, to view larger than average bodies as being repulsive. If you have a wrinkle, if you have a few fat rolls like I do, it can really be, sort of debilitating to try to date, and you certainly aren't trained to see yourself as an object of desire. So I really appreciate that Janovsky includes a plus-sized hero, a romantic lead, and then he's not just a pity fuck, but he's actually a desiring and desirable subject. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, in keeping with a lot of other Janovsky's other works, is a lot of grappling with mental health. Among other things, Ethan has ADHD, which he didn't diagnose until he was an adult, and it's something that he still struggles with as he tries to get his brain to sort of behave. And I think that it's, Janovsky is one of the writers who I admire a lot for grappling with mental health and making mental health not antithetical to romance, but part of it. It's just part of the terrain that people have to navigate when they're getting into a relationship with others. And, that can be sometimes very difficult to do. And, it's just nice to see mental health treated not as an aberration or something that should be hidden or not talked about, but just a fundamental part of human nature and human romance. And then there's the sex aspect. Now, I know that that's a divisive subject for some people within romance, but for me, and certainly nowadays in the sort of sex negative and deeply homophobic culture that we now find ourselves in, gay sex is a political act. To see these two men engaging and deeply consensual, but also deeply erotic and frankly rather hot sex is really nice. And I think that Janovsky also has the ability to capture what gay sex is like in all of its, craziness and humor and all the things that are attendant upon gay sex, or really any sex, but particularly gay sex. And so I really appreciated that element of his storytelling. And lastly, I know I said 3, but maybe 4 things, is the intergenerational aspect. I know that that's also deeply controversial for some people, but I think that he handles it with grace, and I think he handles it with humor, and he shows that, age really is only a number, and that you can find love wherever it falls. And, so I appreciate the fact that Janovsky has given us such a tender, loving romance. I also love the cover. Like, I really admire Janovsky's cover designers. Like, they are really adept at capturing just the sort of ambiance and ethos of what he's going for. And, the fact that it's set in the Catskills is nice. Like, there's a lot to enjoy about this novel. It is, it's relatively short, as romances tend to be, but it is a heck of a lot of fun. It's very sexy. It's very swoony. It's all the things that you would want of gay romance. But also, it has some important things to say. And I think that that's really nice, that romance is an escapist genre, as I've talked about here before. But I also think that it helps us to kind of grapple with some of the more difficult aspects of our lives in a way that feels less threatening than maybe it would in a more realistic genre. And so I really appreciate that Janovsky is willing to tackle some of that more difficult material. So long story short, it is a very much a recommend for me from the Pisces Guide for Pop Culture, or to Pop Culture. It gets our seal of approval. I think that, Janovsky is one of the best, as I said, one of the best writers, and he writes a lot. So he has 3 books out this year, which is a lot, and I admire that he's able to do it so consistently and keep the quality of his books so high. So anyway, that's all I have for the Pisces Guide to Pop Culture today. One small add-on, I will note that I've sold almost 30 copies of my romance, Country Road Romance, which means a great deal. So if you have done a pre-order, I very much appreciate it. In the meantime, if you haven't already, check it out. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble Books A Million, all the places. So Country Road Romance. But if that doesn't strike your fancy, then I definitely do recommend Once Upon You and Me, a very good gay romance from Timothy Janovsky. So for now, that's all for the Pisces Guide to Pop Culture. I'm your host, TJ, and I'll be back soon.